Interesting data showing that more Canadians than ever are seeking a new home south of the border. The latest U.S. Census data shows in 2022, more than 126,000 people moved from Canada to the United States. That is a 70% increase from the previous year. With us this morning is immigration lawyer Len Saunders. He specializes in helping Canadians immigrate to the United States. Welcome to your morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm curious to dig into these numbers with you. First of all, how much of an increase have you seen over the last few years in terms of people looking to leave Canada for the States?
Well, I've seen a huge increase. So I'm based in northern Washington State, just south of Vancouver, and probably 80% of my business right now is Canadians married to Americans who move to the U.S. So for me, it's a huge part of my immigration practice.
We're going to dig into the why in just a second, but I want to give people some numbers. Of the more than 126,000 people who left Canada for the States, the number we mentioned earlier, 53,000 of those were born in Canada, 46,000 were Americans that were returning home, and 30,000 had immigrated to Canada from somewhere else, and then they chose to leave. What are the reasons that your clients are giving you for making the move?
Well, it's interesting. I think the main reason is cost of living. It is so much cheaper to buy a house, not in the big towns like Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, but small town USA, like where I am. The cost of a house, my house probably is worth $500,000. That same house 5 miles north of here in the Vancouver area is $2 to $3 million. So it's not like it's half, it's a quarter of the price. It's so much cheaper for housing in the United States, especially close to the Canadian border.
Snowbirds have been around for a really long time. That's Canadian retirees who move to places like Florida or Arizona for the warm weather. But what kind of changes are you seeing recently in who's looking to move south?
Well, I'm either seeing young people or older people. The young people realize they can't get into the housing market, or if they are able to, they're buying a condo. Whereas in the United States, they can buy a beautiful house. The older people, what they're doing is they're cashing out. They're taking their equity in their house. They're using that equity. They're buying clear titles so that they have no mortgage. And they're using some of that for their retirement income. So, it's young people, old people, some people in between, but the vast majority are the young people and the older retirees.
I'm curious about that older demographic. What do they tell you? What are their concerns about healthcare?
Well, a lot of people are Americans living in Canada, so they can go back and they can still, get their U.S. medical care. Or they're Canadians who are marrying Americans and they're tagging into their spouse's medical. If they're both Canadians, then it's very difficult, especially if they're older, to get medical care. It's expensive, and that sometimes is cost prohibitive to move to the U.S.
Where in the States are clients moving to? Is it border cities like what you're talking about, or is it, further inland?
Well, it's really all over. But a lot of people are moving to border towns. I'm assuming this is happening on the East Coast too, but in the Vancouver area, I can be up to Vancouver from my house in northern Washington State in 45 minutes. So it's an easy commute from northern Washington State into the Vancouver area for Canadians.
Well, it won't be a shorter commute if the Border Service agents go on strike, but that's a different story. Can anybody in Canada just move to the United States if they decide to? Does there have to be a work or a living reason? Like, what are some of the rules and regulations if you're looking to make the move?
Well, the easiest way is if you marry an American like I did. I got my green card in about a year, but this is 20 years ago. If you don't have an American spouse, there are avenues, work visas, employment-based green cards. That's more difficult and more expensive. But my practice, I've just taken this niche market of Canadians moving to the U.S. married to Americans, and that's what my focus is right now.
One last question. 30,000 of that number that we gave were people who had come to this country from somewhere else and are now choosing to go to the United States. In your conversations with them, what are they telling you?
It's, whether you're born in Canada or you're a naturalized Canadian coming from some other country, it's the same issues. It's the cost of living. It's so much cheaper in the United States compared to Toronto, Vancouver, and other, big Canadian cities.
I know some political figures who are going to relish in these numbers. Len Saunders, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.